No, you're making guesses. All right, let's go. Come on. Man. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Stochastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. 49ers-Seahawks. Fun game. Divisional spot. Separated by one game in the standings. Two teams coming off brutal losses last week. San Francisco at home, 7.5-point favorites, loses outright to Arizona. And how about the Seahawks? Matt, how about the Seahawks getting tuned up by the New York Giants without Malik Neighbors? We got a game on our hands.
There's absolutely some witchcraft going on out west with this conference or this division. I don't know what to make of it so far. The second you think one team is going to pull away and then you've got it figured out, you know who's the worst team, they just go out there and then, they lose to the Giants. And the 49ers have blown 2 games now where they, I think, easily should have won. People are drawing conclusions suggesting that it's, Christian McCaffrey related, why this offense hasn't been fully humming. They haven't been at full strength really the whole year. They finally got back their weapons. So I think better days are ahead, but you can't deny it's been a little fishy what's going on out west.
It has. And both of those bad losses, those blown leads were against NFC West opponents.
Yeah, that never helps. So you're like giving life to teams like Arizona who shouldn't have life in this division.
But how about this too, right? Like you could talk all the shit you want on the San Francisco 49ers, and I think much of it would be justified. Although I saw a video today where everyone was, and in the comments was calling for Shanahan's head. I'm not sure that is necessarily the course of action here, but
Who are you going to get? A guy like goes to Super Bowls
you wouldn't
every
believe
other
it.
year.
Matt, you wouldn't believe it. They're going, bring in Belichick. Like, why do you think Bill Belichick is the answer? That's insane.
Yeah, I don't think that's it.
Anyway, so you could say what you want about the Niners, and I'd probably agree with you. What about the fact, though, that the Seahawks' 3 wins came against Bo Nix in Seattle against the 12th man in his NFL debut? Then it came against the Patriots in a game that went to overtime, no less. Patriots, don't forget, Patriots got 20 points on the board in that game. 20 points for the Patriots is an alarmingly high amount of points. And then at home, they beat Miami with Skylar Thompson and Tim Boyle. So forgive me if I'm not fully bought into the Seattle Seahawks, who are atop the NFC West right now either.
I truly don't know what to make of that defense. There is some push and pull. You mentioned the pull, I guess, or the push. I don't care which way you want to pull this, but they've also been extremely injured on defense, especially the last 2 weeks. And it's just like one guy in, one guy out. Now Tariq Woolen's hurt for this team. It looks like they might get back, like Boye Mafe. He finally put in full practices, so I think he'll be back. Julian Love's still questionable, but they're not going to have Byron Murphy, the first-round pick. Uchenna Nwosu, one of their pass rushers at linebacker, he's still out. So I don't know. I just kind of need more information, I think, on this defense. But what I can tell you now is I still don't think they're going to be very good as long as their best players are out. Like, they're highly dependent on these players like Byron Murphy. He's a first-round pick. He needs to play. When he doesn't, this team is not in a position where they have the depth to be able to stand on business. They just can't do it. They don't have the guys when they're dealing with these injuries.
You're right. Yeah, if Julian Love sits, like you said, that's not to mention, though, with Reek Woolen out, you're talking, what is it, Nehemiah Pritchett, who's a 5th-round rookie that probably starts this game.
I love Nehemiah Pritchett. I hope he does something.
Maybe he will, But also, Trey Brown got slaughtered by Darius Slayton last week, and then went on Twitter to talk about how he's like, y'all waited 4 years till I had a bad game. He got killed last week. So I don't know, man. And yeah, Keith Vape, the DraftKings Sportsbook, they said that there's issues right now. I don't know. To your point, it has been a revolving door of guys coming back and leaving and getting hurt and coming back. So we don't necessarily know. Here's what I can say. Whether some guys return today, they're still missing a lot of players, key players anyway, right?
Yeah, they are. And I don't know, man. They're going to need, first of all, that was an atrocious game from Brown. They'll definitely need Witherspoon to actually play up to his first-round potential. He's been a little up and down this year. He's like a gambler out there at corner. He's one of these guys that lives close to the sun. He has electric plays. He's an amazing physical corner, has interceptions, but then he'll also give up plays. So it's going to be a tricky configuration with their secondary. Nehemiah Pritchett, man, like go out there and ball out, young player. I hope you actually get it done. He went to Auburn. He was sick there. So I'm excited to see the young kid play. I don't know if that's a positive for Seattle's defense, though.
You know what? Maybe he'll be okay. He actually wasn't bad when he came in last game, but I wouldn't color myself convinced quite yet. Yeah, and you're right. Where is it? Who said that? Christopher. Yes, George Fant is out, and his backup has struggled a lot. Yeah, Stone Forsythe. So good luck against Bosa. Look, Matt, it's a divisional game, so I don't like. I honestly try to avoid speaking in like definitive terms, like this is going to happen, because these divisional spots, we see it every week. They're unpredictable, but Geno Smith has been pressured at a higher rate than all but 4 quarterbacks in the league. The only quarterback to be sacked more than Geno is Deshaun Watson, 26 sacks for Watson. But the only one to be sacked more than Smith is Watson. And Smith has kind of been responsible for some of those sacks himself. So I think there's just a lot of question marks. There's a lot of question marks with San Francisco too. Ward's questionable. I think he probably plays. Christian McCaffrey's absence looms pretty large. Their red zone efficiency has been in the basement. But that kind of sets the table for us, right? It's a game that could go in 100 different directions, and I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, especially with maybe people selling a little bit the 49ers offense. I don't think this is the spot to sell them. You could see an absolute nuclear explosion game for this 49ers offense. And I don't think anyone would be surprised, especially considering the injuries that we've seen on the Seattle defense. The 49ers defense is a lot healthier. I still think Seattle can move the ball. Despite, this offensive line allowing pressure and Geno taking some sacks, some of which he's responsible for, I've been pretty impressed with Geno. He's throwing to elite receiving options. And the Ryan Grubb offense has impressed me a lot to begin the year. He's creatively getting the ball to players that we didn't see utilized last year, like Jackson Smith and Jigba. A lot of misdirection stuff that we didn't see either. He's just kind of opened the offense to more creativity and let Geno shine. Whether his offensive line protects him enough, we'll find out. But I do think Seattle can do at least their part to keep this game pretty competitive and fairly high scoring, I think.
I think so too. DFS Ed said, Detroit has a good D-line. Wonder why that pressure didn't stop Geno from passing for 400 yards. They also don't have a great secondary. Like, they're clearly a pass funnel defense. So,
Geno's good, man.
He's an accurate quarterback. You know what's crazy, though? In 4 career starts against San Francisco, Geno is completing 72% of his passes, but for only 217 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's 0-4 in those games. And listen to this, Matt. They've lost those games by 20, 18, 18, and 8. So they've all been pretty uncompetitive games. You can make the argument that it's a different coaching staff now, different personnel than we've seen in the past. Absolutely. But Geno struggled against this defense.
Yeah, you bring up good points. It's always going to be, a new team year to year. A lot of those offensive lines were towards the bottom of the league. Now this year, and I mean, it's hard to fix a problem like that in one season, but they're making incremental improvements. The injuries might bring you back down to where we've seen Geno previously against this defense, because the 49ers pass rush is still very good. And I just don't know what we're going to get out of this offensive line. It's been a problem for them, and I don't really see it being something that gets remedied, especially on the injury front. So they're going to need to do more in the off seasons, or just have creative game plans to mask this, whether it's Geno getting the ball out quickly, using some misdirection stuff. I don't know what their solution is going to be, but I mean, I'm sure they're aware of this. It's been a problem for years. It's going to be a problem again today that they're going to have to find an answer for.
Chris Williams, thank you for the super chat, brother. Atone, folks. Bring yourself some good karma. Yes, atone for your sins. Hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment down below. Love reading and responding to those comments. We get a lot of them on this show. It's one of our best shows, and we love doing it. We love having you guys with us. Chris said, won first in some smaller contests last show, and I atoned. I will take thousands profit over Katz's pamper money wins any day of the week. Hit that like button. And Chris gifted 10 memberships as well. You're greatly appreciated, Chris. It does not go unnoticed. All right. You ready to get into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to give you something because I was talking about this from a prop betting standpoint. I bet this the other day. All right. So again, I know that it's been the teams change and personnel and coaching changes, but certain players just seem to have the number of other teams. Debo Samuel, in the 7 games that he's faced San Francisco, Matt, listen to his rushing plus receiving totals. You ready for this?
I think I'm going to be pleasantly surprised by Debo's output.
150, 94, 165, 97, 157, 135, and 112.
That'll definitely play.
With 6 touchdowns.
I can't say I'm surprised. I wonder, I would be curious to look at the splits of health for the rest of the 49ers in those games. Was this a deliberate game plan to exploit Seattle, or were they depleted and missing some guys with injuries? But I mean, Debo's a very talented player. Even when they're at full strength, he's going to be a focal point of the offense. So maybe it doesn't matter as much as I'm suggesting.
Remember yesterday I was asking you, I was like, is there any better way I can find zone versus man coverage rates for defenses?
Yes, I remember.
And you were saying like, there's this, but I mean, there really aren't many great options out there.
Not free options, that's for sure.
Right. Not free. Yeah, exactly. Well, I wanted to figure out because Debo's historically like mediocre against man coverage. Maybe just like not good, you could say, against man. Against zone, he's a fucking world beater. And Seattle plays man and zone at an average clip. I was looking at PFF, an article on this the other day, or this morning, sorry. And they're also significantly better at, just stop rate or better at limiting success rate in man than they are in zone. This could just be one of those games again where Debo bounces back after he had a great matchup, a heavy zone defense in Arizona last week that he struggled with. This might just be one of those massive bounce back games for Debo. I like him. I bet Debo rushing plus receiving at 3-1, 100 alt on that as well. So I'm taking the bait. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here on Debo tonight.
I like that. The man zone stuff is really noisy, in my opinion. It's always good when it lines up with like an opinion you have about a player, but I just have a hard time looking at it because it's always facing the past. You're not taking into account any adjustments the team might make for personnel you're using.
Sure.
If they have injuries, like maybe you lose your best man coverage corner or something. There's like blanket statements. This team uses this much man versus zone. So I just have a hard time because it's all just diving straight into the past. You don't get any information moving forward other than just like some loose tendencies. And these things are constantly changing. So it's almost like I don't know, 2 years ago, everyone was all fixated on the wide receiver cornerback matchups. How many routes is this receiver running against this corner? Now you never hear it.
Yeah.
I kind of think this is the same thing. Just people getting way too cute with some of their analysis. But I mean, it's definitely a piece of the puzzle. I'm not sure it's actionable for like an analyst like you sitting on your couch. Are you really going to figure out what the defensive game plan is against like Geno Smith in the corners by looking at 2 percentages, man versus zone coverage? Like, it's just, maybe I'll just use me personally instead of accusing everyone else. I don't think I'm smart enough to figure it out. So it's like, I'm just not going to really dive too much into that.
I know I'm not smart enough to figure it out. I do know though that when I look at a depth chart and I see that Riq Woolen is out, who has been their best man coverage corner, I think that probably only helps Debo in a spot like this.
Yeah, I think they probably play more zone. One thing you can definitely figure out is not everyone can play man coverage. You need a very special corner to actually be able to execute that. But yeah, I mean, and plus, like who cares about man versus zone? Tariq Woolen is sick. Now you go to a backup. Like,
that's right. I mean, it just gets worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lee Price said, would a good rule be if playing Debo, don't play Mason and vice versa? Obviously, there are paths where both hit, but seem to eat into each other. No, I don't. I'll set zero rules or anything as far as that goes. I have no problem playing them together on a 1-game slate.
100% agree.
I did it last week and I had a really, really good lineup in the power sweep. And I had Debo and Mason and they combined for like 11.8. But that wasn't because one cannibalized or vultured the other. They were just bad.
Yeah, I mean, that offense wildly underperformed. We talked about this on Monday because I was heavily invested into it. Yeah, I mean, I had a ton of, I think you played, you had two of the guys that you were heavily exposed to, and I tacked on Brock Purdy, making it even worse.
It happens. But you know what? I mean, do we really think that, do we really think that the red zone efficiency can stay this bad for this long?
No. Historically, they have some of the best red zone efficiency.
Yeah. And like, I mean, Christian McCaffrey clearly plays a role. You know, his absence is significant. But is it enough to where you go, this team's just not going to be able to score points? I don't see it. I mean, I like Debo today quite a bit. Then the question becomes like price points, because it's easy to just talk guys and throw them into a lineup until you realize that you're $10,000 over in salary. But, you know, some of these guys are expensive. Now, Jordan Mason is 10,000. I saw someone in chat earlier mention that that's crazy. Yeah, look, 8,800 Debo certainly looks good to me, especially given that he's only $1,400 more than George Kittle. I know your thoughts on Kittle all the time, every time we talk about this, but we'll get into it. I still think Mason's viable here. I know he lost a fumble and Garendo got a little bit of work, but like, Mason still has to be the workhorse running back in this offense. And his volume has still been, you know, almost as high as any running back in football.
Outside of Kamara, I'm not sure anyone has better volume than
Barkley, maybe.
That's true. Barkley is very good volume.
Dude, Barkley has 95% of the running back touches for Philly this year.
I wouldn't do it any differently.
Why would you?
So glad somebody figured out how to get Kenneth Gainwell off the field.
Dude, you're preaching to the, anyone who knows me knows that I think Kenneth Gainwell is the most pedestrian running back that for some reason continued to get work despite wildly mediocre results every single week. Could you imagine giving him like 30% of the carries when you have Saquon Barkley watching from the sideline?
No, dude, I can't.
Nick would have done it if he was calling the plays, but yeah. Mason's just, we're not worried that his volume's going to come down after one fumble, are we?
Garendo's already fumbled this year too. So, I mean,
right.
Garendo's touched the ball like 3 times and he's fumbled already.
It's a good call. Did he lose it?
I can't remember. It might have been a special teams fumble. He did lose it.
He did. He did. Yeah. On one carry. Like he had one carry in the game and he fumbled and lost it.
Oh, that ain't it, man.
So is Mason somebody to you that the price lines up with volume here?
I personally think so. To be honest with you, I think you could still argue he's a little under projected just price wise. The only real issue you run into is that you have other 49ers who also project well that are maybe a little too cheap. But yeah, man, I mean, Mason is so safe. He is not quite in the conversation because of alternatives where I'm like, okay, do I want to play him in the flex or captain? Doesn't matter. I'm playing him either way. Just got to decide where. He's not quite there, but he's pretty close, man. I like him more than the quarterbacks.
So do I. So do I. And, you know, last week he didn't get in the end zone, but you look at his touchdown prop for this week, it's not that much different than it was last. I mean, last week it was crazy, but his touchdown prop for this week, Matt, let me just pull it up one more time. I think it's like minus 170 again. Let's see. Mason using the free live odds screen over at OddsShopper. You should take advantage. Okay. DraftKings minus 200, FanDuel minus 180, Caesars minus 195. Pinnacle has it at minus 151, but you get the point. Like he's a heavy favorite to score today. And like, what's his rushing attempt prop? If you had to guess, 16.5.
easily, if not more.
Yeah, I'm taking a conservative number here. 17.5. Juice to the over.
They just don't have anyone else, man. Like
No.
Debo being back, perhaps Debo gets a carry or two. But I mean, Debo has played in the rushing attack when they've been fully depleted. They're, based on what they've done this year, I think completely trustworthy of Mason, and they're willing to give him an immense workload.
Yeah. Rushing plus receiving yards, 99.5 on DraftKings. So yeah, like if you got the guy projected around 100 total yards, $10,000 is not, and minus, let's say 175 or so to score a touchdown. Yeah. Makes sense to me. What about Walker?
Walker, he's concerning, man. Like he's run hot in some games, you know, rolling over defenders' backs and having extremely long runs. But I'm worried about his workload. And we've seen that now in 2 straight weeks. They're not phasing out Charbonnet, and I don't think they should. He's been, one, good when he's on the field. He's a reliable pass catcher. You can play him in any situation. And two, when they give Walker these massive workloads, he just keeps getting hurt. So why would you not use a very good change of pace back to spell Walker and hopefully keep him healthy for a majority of the season? I just don't understand why you wouldn't do that given the alternatives. And I think they're going to moving forward. Luckily, I guess, they brought down his price a little bit, so he's at least more of a conversation piece today because of price. But I still think ultimately this timeshare is going to be something that hurts him. And I just don't know at the price if he's going to project all that well. Right now, we have him as negatively leveraged. We'll see where this goes through the day, but I agree with it.
So do I. Sarah said, of course, 49ers and Seahawks lose last week. 99% of bets were on them to win. Corrupt BS. I bet the Cardinals. That was a traditional spot for the Cardinals in a divisional game coming off a blowout loss as double digit, or as, touchdown plus dogs to come in there and compete. I didn't bet them to win, of course. Didn't bet them to win, but no, there were a lot of people, a lot of sharp people that I listen to and pay attention to that also were on the Cardinals. Now, sure, like the 49ers money line, but why are you betting 49ers money line at those odds? Whatever. Either way. It is nuts though, Matt, that did you know? Okay, I'll give you a stat that's going to blow your mind. So underdogs this year of 6+ points. What do you think they are against the spread? There's been 19 games.
So I actually heard someone talking about this on a podcast recently. I know it's way better than you would expect, but I can't remember the exact figure.
16-2-1.
That's crazy.
And so that's nuts. What I think is even crazier is that they're 11-8 straight up. They're well over 500 straight up as 6+ point dogs.
There's a lot of parity in this league, man. And we're dealing with small samples. We're a month into the season. Weird things happen when you have full samples, but drawing conclusions is really tricky. And I mean, these are the best coaching staffs in the world. Sometimes it's just you see something on film, you make an adjustment, and you were better than your opponent. That doesn't even take into account we're playing a game that is event driven when things like interceptions, and I mean, you have a pick six or something like we saw in a couple of these games, it just wildly swings the outcomes. I mean, it's just a volatile game overall.
The level of parity in the NFL is only going up too. It's only becoming more extreme. It's really crazy.
It's an exciting game.
What's that?
It's an exciting game, man. If they could get I don't know, some way to limit these injuries, I think people would be having a lot better of a time, and they're already having a good time.
Yeah, that'd be huge. Poor Ben still has to do the Survivor video every week over at Odd Shopper. Like there's nobody left.
That sucks, man. What a bad season for Ben's Survivor video.
Yeah. And that video usually crushes, but like week 1 is Cincinnati.
Yep.
Lost. Week 2, there were a lot, but I think that was Baltimore losing as 9.5 point favorites at home against the Raiders.
Ben should just migrate this to his Discord and be like, ask me if you have any questions. Because I lost in week 1.
Did you? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, and then Cleveland week 3 against the Giants. San Francisco against the you could literally go down. There's 16 of them. There's 16 games that you could have had that just went completely. Not only did the team not cover, but 11 of them lost outright. It's been nuts. But
Yeah, I don't know, man.
besides the point.
And I'm not advocating. I see in the chat, let's go to flag football. I absolutely 100% unequivocally do not want that. I absolutely love the violence and the aggression. It's my favorite thing about the sport and why I like it. I love the gun celebrations. I don't care. Let them do whatever they want. If you have a good play, you should be able to do whatever you want. The only thing I have a problem with is when these DBs have mediocre plays and then they celebrate. Kick those guys out of the game. I don't want to see that. But anyway, it just sucks when you have Christian McCaffrey as your first pick. He goes down. It sucks when you have Debo Samuel, Michael Pittman, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice. Like, it's just not fun anymore when you're invested in this and then your guys all get hurt. And some of it is in DFS. Like, who wants to be playing Rashee Rice in a large portfolio of your lineups? And then boom, he's out on like the 6th play of the game. And you're like, guess I'm dead. Like, it's just not fun. That's what I'm saying, where I wish they could have some way to prevent injuries. They don't. And it sucks. It is what it is. It's a violent sport. I absolutely 100% would never, ever advocate for taking the violence out of it.
No, I believe you. I believe you. But that gun celebration is as old. It's a celebration as old as time, and I love it. And I think it should be
I love it so much. I don't care at all.
You got to go with the double finger though. You can't do it's got to be the double finger barrel, right? Like, it's got to look. I remember Marcus Morris in the NBA like pointed it at someone once and just went like that. And he got like pointed it at him. And I think they took exception to that. But I'm all about, what I can't stand? Not that I think they should be penalized for it, but I think I hate like the interception, all 11 guys run into the end zone and start posing for the crowd. Oh, I hate it. Or you say you make a mediocre play. The worst is when you make that play, but you're down by 3 touchdowns and you've been burned all game. And then it's an incomplete pass and you're a corner, but it wasn't even a pass breakup. It was just a bad throw, or the receiver tripped over his own shoelaces, and you celebrate that type of stuff. Get him out of here. Flag him for being dumb, but don't flag guys for having fun.
Yeah, especially when you make a good play and it's actually a real celebration that's deserved. Who cares?
Yeah. But I mean, the old Alec Baldwin celebration, let it stand. All right. So you don't get that reference.
No, I don't know.
I knew you
would. I don't know
would.
what that is.
All right. Let's talk through San Francisco a little bit more here. And I want to pull our Sims results up. You and I will build a lineup in the single lineup sim as well. I do like Debo. I think that price is good. I just don't anticipate him having bad games, like as much as he, last 2 games or whatever. Last game really was the bad one, but I like that price point. I like him at captain. Where do we have him as far as leverage goes?
He's not as high as I thought he would be.
I thought he'd be higher at that price, honestly.
So did I. When I think the biggest, sticker shock moment for me this morning was seeing Debo's price and be like, damn, he's cheap. But ultimately, like, Ayuk's coming off a pretty good game. They finally got him going. Kittle's still involved in the offense. We have most of them negatively leveraged. I think it's just like, all right, this is their implied team total. They're expected to score this many points, this much yardage. They're all projected to get a fair amount of it. And because of that, they kind of cannibalize each other. But I'm still very interested in the ceilings for these guys, without a doubt. And I got a fair amount of them in the Sims tool, so it's not like they're bad plays. I think they're just a little more volatile.
It's probably what it is. And there's also a lot of mouths to feed in this offense still, even without Christian McCaffrey. Mason still gets a lot of work. Jawan Jennings has not been, a ghost by any measure. Like, he's actually involved in this offense. Week to week, it's going to fluctuate, obviously, but still, 10 targets over the last 2 weeks. It's not insignificant, Matt. And he's $4,000. Jawan Jennings is actually kind of cheap. Against the Seahawks team that's missing Rick Woolen. The Julian Love injury, is that significant for you? Because he's a pretty decent player.
Yeah, it is for sure. I'd be very curious to see what it looks like out there and, what kind of zone man coverages they run without him additionally. You don't want to be down two of your starting defensive backs. It's just a complete disaster. I mean, talk about like Nehemiah Pritchett having to get on the field. Who are we turning to next?
Right. Yeah, no, they're running out of options to field a defense. So I actually don't think that the Jennings is all that crazy of an option at all at 4K. Like, on a scale from 1 to 10, where would you put value at on this slate as far as, how robust it is?
Pretty low because we have hyper condensed receiving cores on both sides. So you don't have I don't know, who was the guy we were playing on Monday? Tipton. You don't have guys like that.
He got a lot of targets, by the way, downfield.
Yeah, we don't have any 1K Tipton options because, the wide receiver 3 on Seattle's Tyler Lockett or Smith and Jigbo. The wide receiver 3 on San Francisco's Jennings. And he doesn't play as much as normal wide receiver 3s because of 12 personnel and Kyle Juszczyk stuff. So, I mean, it's hard to get down there. Who do we really consider? I think Jennings is among the best. Otherwise, kickers defenses, of course. Maybe you're throwing a dart on like a Garendo who's played a handful of snaps, but that's kind of what you're getting to if you're getting down there. There's a guy that's going to be on the field for a handful of snaps, or you have to go up to the Jennings kicker defense range.
So the range really is like, if you talk 3 to 4K, you have Niners defense at 4,200. They'll have some ownership. Noah Fant is $3,000.
He might be the best.
Yeah, right. He's not exciting, but he's, he has a pulse. Zach Charbonnet is $3,400. So Charbonnet to me is one of the most kind of interesting cases on this slate. Not because, at any point is he going to take over this backfield. It's just not going to happen. Walker missed several weeks with an oblique injury. I think it was an oblique injury or whatever, right? Some abdomen oblique.
It
whatever.
was an oblique, yeah.
Okay. Comes back and immediately has a monster game, which was not good for me or for you. Monster game against Detroit last Monday on that doubleheader. But Charbonnet still played 36% of snaps last week, 42% the week prior. They were playing from behind in both of those games, so I think that should probably be taken into consideration. But he played 34% of snaps in week 1, 2, or week 1, and they had the lead. I guess the way I see it is at $3,400, there's at least going to be some opportunities in the passing game. He has 5 targets in back-to-back games. If you're desperate for value, he's at least the guy that you can bank on for like 5, 6, 7 looks between the passing game and the run game. And that's more than you can say for most other guys down here.
Yeah, I have no problem getting to him if he's the guy you prefer. I do question the ceiling, as you mentioned, just never really see him running away with the backfield. He's going to need a Walker injury for that to occur. So he's kind of dealing with a capped ceiling no matter what, outside of just extremely volatile, running hot on touchdowns or something like that, which isn't likely. I think I prefer Fant to him just because you kind of know what you're getting. It's a lot of hollow routes, but he's out there a lot more than a guy like Charbonnet, and this should be a pass-friendly script for Seattle. So I think he's the player I prefer in this range, but I don't feel great about it. The other options we get a decent amount of are like Seattle's defense. That's pretty dicey with some of their injuries. I might have to bump them down. That'll be a decision I make before lock when we get the injury report and know if guys like Julian Love are playing. But yeah, it's pretty gross. One interesting thing I want to get your take on in the Sims and just our leverage tool is I was still getting some of these guys that are playing like a handful of snaps. I have just in a raw run of our data in the Sims exposure to Eric Sauber and AJ Barner and Kyle Juszczyk and some of these receivers. It might be a slate where you want to gamble on the guy who's going to play like 5 or 6 snaps and maybe get a catch because at their prices, it allows you to jam an extra stud. And this is such a stud heavy slate that maybe it just flat out doesn't matter if you can get like a touch or two from the stone minimum guy in order to get Debo, Kittle, Smith and Jigba, whatever stud you prefer. So just a thought. I wanted to get your take on it.
Oh, I'm not opposed to it at all. With how top heavy it is, does it make more sense to go top heavy and then really just full out punt? Yeah, I think there's a lot of logic to that. The guy last Monday when we had, what was it? Jets, Dolphins, right? Jets, Dolphins, and then Seahawks, Lions that
Yeah.
won the 500K or whatever it was solo had AJ Barner, and he was just unowned. He had 2 targets, 2 receptions, 27 yards, and a touchdown. Noah Fant is obviously more involved in the passing game, but the funny thing is red zone targets this year, they both have 1. And Barner has 1 inside the 10. Fant has 0. It's just, you look at Fant's production outside of week 3 against Miami, he's been wildly unproductive. 3 for 24, 2 for 26, 1 for 14, 2 for 11. So if you're talking about a 3K Noah Fant or Barner at 1,600, and that gets you up out of it, like up out of the range that you and I like to call the dead zone, right? Like the backup quarterback graveyard. If it gets you out of that and to like a George Kittle or someone else in this range, a Jackson Smith and Jigba, potentially even a Brandon Ayuk, over a, who else is down? There's no one down there. So you'd have to just restructure your whole lineup. I'd be 100% in favor of that. I really don't have an issue with it at all. I think we're going to have to make some of those tough choices that's going to get us to just better overall players and hope the big guns show up.
I have no problem with Barner. He looks a lot different than Noah Fant, who I guess his core is kind of like a big receiver playing tight end. He's not a blocker. So he's never going to have the 100% snap share, every route share, because he just can't be on the field in certain configurations of their offense. And we've seen that all year. It's not just AJ Barner. Pharaoh Brown has played a lot. Now, Pharaoh Brown is like a 6th offensive lineman, so I wouldn't play him. But Barner is like a weird player. He's enormous. He's 6'6", like 250 pounds. So he's definitely your 2-way tight end. He's also a rookie. So, I mean, if you're looking at guys that could potentially play their way into more snaps with as bad as Noah Fant has been, Barner fits the bill. And plus, you have a role that's semi-secure already. I would expect like 20 to 25% of the snaps for Barner. He's not uninvolved in the pass game. So you could definitely look to him. And again, it's more, I don't love Barner, but I love what he allows you to get.
So, Jordan, let me pull the screen up. Let's look at the Sims for a second. All right, go to, exposures. Go to captain. Is it a lot of Geno at captain?
I was surprised. We did get a ton of Geno at captain.
I capped him at 15% on my first run just to see what I would get. Okay, now go to flex. And obviously, we're still super early in the day. Like, things are going to change. And scroll down. By the way, if you're not using the Sims tool for showdown slates, you are missing out. The tool has just been wildly profitable for showdown slates. Matter of fact, we just had a guy with the 100K win on a showdown slate a few weeks ago. Another 50K a couple weeks ago as well. If you ever want to check it out, any of our tools, links in the description and in the chat. So we kind of consolidated all of the links just to make it easier for you guys. You click that link, it'll take you to the landing page for the join now, and you can see everything for weekly or monthly, right? So like, all right, you want NFL, you want to look at weekly, the essentials or the light or the core. There's 4 different packages, all essentially catered to whatever style of play you have, however much you play, whether you're max entering, whether you're playing single entry, 20 max, all of that stuff. But yeah, the light and the core are the best bang for your buck, hands down. Obviously, if you're someone that takes this very seriously, you want the max package. But when you look at core, you're getting the Sims. The only difference between that and the max is you can't generate up to more than 1,000. With the max, you can 10,000 lineups. But you have the single lineup sim as well, where you can build lineups by hand and get instant feedback on them when you run the sim, which is awesome because it's just combining like old school hand building with the new style and the evolved way of building DFS lineups in the Sims. But the boom bust tool, ownership, player projections, projected stacks, premium Discord comes with every package, you name it. Even, pick 6, underdog, prize picks, optimizers, all of that stuff, you got it all. And the single lineup sim. So Matt, I'd say for Showdown, it's made us much, much, much better players than we were even, a year or two ago when you and I were doing this show and didn't have the ability to have something like the Sims that factored in projection, ownership, but also leverage and just the overall construction of lineups and trying to eliminate all of these lineups being duped as well.
Yeah, I was actually looking at my results the other day for Showdown after the Monday night slate, just as a whole on the year. And one thing the Sims have helped me do a lot is just increase my cash percentage as well. And I think part of the reason is I'm not making stupid mistakes. Everything that comes out of the Sims tool is a highly projected lineup, and it's factoring in ownership. So you're removing some of the problems that formerly you would have with optimizers that don't consider ownership. You don't have to worry about dupes as much because that's all taken into account. It's literally spitting out the lineups that have the best combination of projection versus ownership. We're trying to duplicate the field in these simulations and tell you what people are actually going to play and then the percentage of the time these lineups actually win. So just incredibly useful, seeing even something as small as like a cash percentage go up. We talk about this a lot. Sometimes you're trying to just stay afloat through the variance until you get that big score through to the top with how top heavy these tournaments are. This will help you not only make good lineups that put you in position to win, but they're also helping my just bottom line cash percentage with some of those little things in tournaments too.
Yeah, exactly. Our friend Gundacker always says he plays DFS like it's an EKG machine. You know, you're just kind of treading water along and then hit the spike. And that's the way I loved that when I heard him say that. I thought it was such a great phrase, a great way to describe it. Adam Pavelka, hey fellas, just bought the core package last week. Love the content. Keep it up. Thanks, man. And you ever have any questions too, guys? Jump in the Discord or in my DMs on Twitter. Never hesitate to ask. Any of you who have hit me up, you know that I'll always respond and point you in the right direction. But yeah, man, the tools, they've made a huge difference for I think all of us. And it's awesome to see that. Plus, when you have something like this with the Sims, it just allows you to make lineups that you're not going to be able to make on your own, because in Showdown, God, it's so tough to click those buttons to make those decisions because it seems like it's the wrong move. Yet the type of stuff that wins these contests is usually stuff that, you know, the Sims is going to help you build. But
I mean,
anyway,
how many times have we come on here with the single lineup generator, thrown in something that we think is a smash, and then it's either too owned, too duped, and we're like, oh, I didn't realize it said negative ROI.
yeah, the single lineup Sim just shits all over us.
But I mean, that's good feedback because
That's what
now
you
I'm not going to
want.
play that lineup. I don't want to play a lineup like that.
No, you want to get better. And
Yeah.
also, I can't stress this enough, guys. If you're a sub or you want to be a sub or you're thinking about it, utilize the post-contest simulator every week. Every time you're done playing, go in, review your lineups, look what the simmed ROI was, actual ROI, look what the winning lineups and builds looked like. It's going to take you a really long way just to becoming better over time. Anyway, link down there in the description and chat if you ever want to check it out. All right, Matt. So I'm looking at the lineups that we have built. And one of the things that stands out to me, a lot of kicker, number one, but also, okay, so like first lineup, our highest sim lineup, Brandon Ayuk, Brock Purdy, Geno Smith, Juwan Jennings, Jordan Mason, Matthew Wright. Then we actually have Wright captain lineups. You have the Kittle captain lineup with Purdy, Mason, Walker, and Matthew Wright in there as well. Jordan, I don't know if you can expand that. We might not need to. Like first lineup is a 5-1 San Francisco, 4-2 San Francisco, 5-1 San Francisco, but then 4-2 Seattle, 4-2 Seattle, 3-3 Seattle, 4-2 San Francisco, 4-2 Seattle, really spread out at the top. And I think that tells us that there might not be one specific build that works the best in this slate, especially with the lack of value.
Absolutely. It's going to be tricky, especially jamming the studs. I think part of the reason why you get some of those weird kicker lineups is because there's so many studs and we're depleted on value. I don't know if I agree with the Matthew Wright captain. I mean, we're talking about a guy he's a backup kicker,
Yeah.
and he doesn't exactly have like the best field goal percentage in the NFL. So I mean, I'm a little hesitant on him. He might be a guy bumped down. But I mean, you have to balance that with the implied team total. So I'm not sure where I'm going to land on the Matthew Wright stuff, but I don't think he's very good. Anyway,
Would you use an ROI boost to deboost him, or would you bump the projection or cap his exposure?
I might X him out of captain and then just use an ROI. I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to mess with him, and I might just take him out of captain.
I could see that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I don't really know. we don't have
Right.
any value. So I don't want to bump him down in flex and then just get like a ton of, I don't know, use check or something, you know?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Cause right, $4,600, 49.5 point total game. San Francisco has struggled in the red zone, so there's that. I mean, shit, Jake Moody is that Jets game. He had 26. Was he optimal captain in that opener? That Jets
I don't
game?
know if he was optimal captain. I can't remember, but
He was 6 for 6. And then against New England, another big game. So they're different kickers, but the way that this offense is played, Matthew Wright to me in the flex, I don't think I'll touch exposure there. I'm with you that I may tinker a little bit, get him out of any of those captain spots.
85% in his career on field goals. Yeah, I don't, just a little dicey with him. He's missed plenty. I mean,
If
he's a
you had to
backup for
rank,
a reason. If he was any good, he'd have a starting job.
if you were ranking San Francisco skill players, how would you do it today? Like for me, it's Mason. I think I'd still go Debo over Ayuk, but it's really close for me. Um, that's like they're neck and neck. Then I would go Kittle, and then pretty much just down the salary line, like Juwan Jennings after that. Yeah, that's probably where I'm at. And then it's just nobody.
I prefer Debo to Ayuk. They're only 400, separating them in price. Target share should be better for Debo. He gets some carries in the run game when they occasionally decide to use him there. It's at least something in his bag. Ayuk doesn't have that in his bag. Could Ayuk outperform him any individual game? Sure, he's hyper talented and the offense is explosive, but I think just from a raw touch perspective, I'd rather have Debo for 400 more. But I agree with you the rest of the way and the ordering. I prefer Mason to them both. We'll see where I'm going to be closely monitoring ownership throughout the day. Right now, I think we have Mason a little under-owned. If that comes up, then I'll have more interest in Debo and Ayuk. So this is a standby situation that's currently where I'm at, but we'll be monitoring that very close.
I think right now my two favorite captains are Mason and Debo.
I agree.
Yeah. You could convince me though of Ayuk. You can always convince me of DK Metcalf because he can beat any matchup.
For sure. DK is an absolute stud.
Yeah, truly a monster. I'm never against, if DK pops up in the captain spot, I go, okay, that works. What about
You,
the pass catchers for Seattle though? Because you have DK, in years past it was always just crazy, right? It was DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. And then whatever third receiver was in there that might catch a deep pass once or twice a game and was otherwise just non-existent. But now Jackson Smith and Jigba's role is really and rapidly evolving in his second year. You look at like the reception prop on Lockett and JSN, and they were both at 4.5, right? They project so similarly in a lot of ways. How do you see this hierarchy breaking down? Because we already talked about Noah Fant. That's a pretty easy one. I don't think that's all that tough to figure out. We already talked about AJ Barner. We agree at dirt cheap. He's perfectly fine. But what about that trio of receivers?
I don't think there's enough separating them opportunity wise to prioritize getting up to Metcalf, even though he's more talented. He should have the best target share week in, week out. And he's probably just the most explosive. I think you can see that just by looking at him. But I mean, 43 targets for Metcalf, 40 for Smith and Jigba, and 32 for Lockett. They're finally using him in more of a complementary role, but still, that's very good opportunity for your third wide receiver. I like paying down for Seattle to Smith and Jigba and Lockett, allowing you to get up to a more condensed, explosive, higher end option on San Francisco, whether that be Mason or Debo, whatever it is. So I find myself landing more on Lockett and Smith and Jigba. No slight to Metcalf. When I get him, I'll get him, and I certainly won't limit that. But it's definitely those three hyper condensed target shares. I just don't think you're paying quite enough for Lockett and Smith and Jigba on this slate.
Yeah, I like that line of thinking a lot. The one thing that I don't think I'm going to do, and we're going to build a lineup here in a second using the single lineup sim, so that should be fun. The one thing I don't believe I'm going to do is have any punts at captain. I've done it before with some of the cheaper guys at captain, that if it pays off, it pays massive dividends. I just don't know who I can play at captain that makes sense. Because when you do something like that, that is just now working under the assumption that how many of these other guys, Lockett, JSN, Metcalf, Walker, Debo, Ayuk, Kittle, Mason, like how many of them have to have mediocre games for whatever punt it is to be the optimal captain? And if your argument is the optimal captain is a punt that has a really big game, okay, I suppose that's possible, but I don't know where that's going to come from.
The punt captain, you're kind of working against yourself. Like, isn't
Right.
the whole reason you're punting at captain to get the studs and then you want them all to fail? So your punt captain is the optimal captain. You know, it's like counterintuitive. It doesn't really make a lot of sense.
Well, I guess the optimal result there would just be that like all of them are okay, but the punt has a good game and those guys are just all right.
I didn't get a lot of that in The Sims, and
I have
that
none of
kind of it backs up my intuition that that is an extremely unlikely outcome,
Yeah.
especially on a slate like this with so many studs. It's not like, all right, we're fading. I don't know who's a team that has like one stud. You're not fading like I don't know, like the Jets with
Malik
Brees Hall and
Neighbors.
Garrett Wilson, and outside of that, like a punt could go off like Lazard or something. It's not a team like that. There's so many studs on this slate.
It would be a very, very difficult way of making it work. So I'll tell you what I have at captain right now. I have 2.7% Juwan Jennings at captain. That's my only semi punt.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine, but that's it. I don't have anyone else. I have
I
no
did get
sharp.
I got some Matthew Wright and a percent of Noah Fant. I'm definitely going to try to remove that Fant probably. And then Wright, I mean, we'll have to see.
All of my cheapest players as far as exposure goes to in the flex, it's guys like Tyler Lockett at 5,400. It's guys like Matthew Wright and Jason Myers. I have to get down to 17% to get the next guy, and that's Noah Fant. And then 16% Jennings, 7% Charbonnet, only a couple percent AJ Barner, 1% Kyle Juszczyk. It's just the lineups aren't forcing the stud plus punt build as much as I thought it might at all. It's going to Lockett and it's getting some of these kickers in there as well.
Yeah, the only hesitation I have with that is this Matthew Wright projection.
Me too.
And I saw someone bring it up in chat when they're looking at long field goal attempts, perhaps they're a little more likely to go for it. I agree with that. I mean, it's a backup kicker. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to look into this Matthew Wright projection a little more. I think there's a chance he's over projected.
Yeah, there probably is. We can look at that though.
But it's also like, who are you gonna play instead? Charbonnet, Fant, okay. Jennings, sure. Do you really want to be like super overexposed to any of those guys? I personally don't. So
I don't.
My approach probably, if this slate started in 10 minutes, I would probably just give Wright a slight ROI decrease in the tools, but probably not do anything crazy because I don't want to be like overexposed to Noah Fant on this slate. Absolutely not.
Eric Ronas, Cortland Sutton captain. All right, funny guy. Yeah, funny guy. But fortunately for you, Eric Ronas, guess what team plays Thursday night football next week?
Denver.
It's the Denver Broncos. Yeah, I can't wait for Cortland Sutton to smash on Thursday night. It's gonna be hilarious. Yeah, it's Broncos Saints in the Dome next week. I just looked it up right now, much to my delight. Thursday, October 17th. Who else haven't we talked about that you want to dig into before we build this lineup and head out?
It's not the Super Bowl, so I don't think we can talk Juszczyk.
Yeah. And I don't know if they're going to the Super Bowl this year.
Yeah, me either. It's been a tough start. But again, I think you should at least consider, if you're playing 150 and larger field stuff, I think you should at least consider the guys that are going to be on the field for 10 snaps or fewer, because they allow you to get a lot of weird stuff and a lot of studs at the top. And I mean, Juszczyk, he played 40 snaps last week. If you get one trick play with Juszczyk, that could be enough. He's not expensive. But then Ronnie Bell played 10 snaps. Eric Saubert, backup tight end, was at 13. Isaac Guerrero played 9. And that could be something they do, especially if the game is in check. Guerrero might play a little bit more because, I mean, if I'm San Francisco, I would be worried about wearing down Mason at some point. And you got to get him through till McCaffrey comes back. So that's worth mentioning. On Seattle, I think we already kind of talked about Barner. He's the only one I have a ton of interest in. Farrell Brown is literally a 6th offensive lineman. And then, I mean, they basically aren't giving snaps to any of the receivers. Laviska Shenault had 5 and Jake Bobo had 2.
Yeah, I don't think Jake Bobo is going to see his role expand anytime soon. So
I love Jake Bobo. He was an all-star in the preseason. He was awesome at UCLA. I miss him.
he was a beast in the preseason. Him and Tom Kennedy is always the preseason darling for Detroit.
I kind of feel bad for Tom Kennedy, the Detroit Lions Tom Kennedy, not our very own. Because he balls out every preseason, and then he has to go into Dan Campbell's offense. He's like, sorry, bud, you didn't do enough. It's like, if I'm Tom Kennedy, I'm like, what do I need to do?
No, dude, he balls out every preseason.
And he never makes the roster.
He's a preseason Hall of Famer.
He's got to be.
Right? Has to be. Anyway, I think we covered it, right? Should we build a lineup? And of course, we'll be back for Live Before Lock tonight at 7:15 Eastern.
I think, did we miss a super chat?
Oh, did we? Hold on. If we did, that is on me. Actually, it's on Jordan. I'll blame Jordan.
Come on, Jordan.
I don't think
it was a Malik Mustafa super chat. Jordan Klein.
From Michael. Okay. Can you see it, Matt?
It was, I think, I saw it a while ago. Thoughts on Malik Mustafa. Did I miss anything in the question?
Yep, that's it. He's basically saying that he's a replacement tonight.
Yeah, I think he's a 4th round pick out of Wake Forest. He was like the best player on their defense last year. And he's an interesting prospect because he didn't test. We don't have a lot of information on him, but basically an eraser in coverage. I think he had a sub 50% completion percentage allowed last year. If it was a little higher than that, it wasn't by much. I mean, he was right around 50%. And he's like a unique player. He had like some plays where he would line up off the edge and blitz, and he'd come up with like a sack and had a decent amount of pressure. So I think he could be like a unique chess piece for this defense, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, there should be some optimism with him. He's definitely not just some guy you pull off the street. He had a lot of talent at Wake Forest.
Okay. Let's build a lineup.
Yeah.
Debo captain, you want to do it?
Sure. I love Debo.
Yeah. And obviously we could go Mason here. You could go Gino. There's a lot of the Ayuk, Metcalf. I'm always happy, like I said, to go to Metcalf, but let's just try it with Debo. Again, guys, the idea here, yes, it's obviously to build a lineup that sims well, but more so it's to figure out what is going to grade out well. Like what lineups are the best type of builds for tonight. So if it grades out poorly, all right, sucks, but we go back to the drawing board. It's more giving us direction than anything else. And that's why I love using this. You can continue to build off of that. And again, link down there if you wanted to use this tool. It's in the light, core, and max package, all 3 of those. Debo at captain, you pick the first flags.
Jordan Mason.
Okay. I want to see if I can jam Metcalf in there.
I guess one of the weird things we didn't bring up, Geno Smith projects really well tonight. Really well.
I know.
And he might go underowned. I don't know if we can fit. If we fit him, we're going to go down to at least 2 punts. But that might not honestly be the worst thing. We were talking all show about going 2 punts. You want to try it with Geno? I mean, I can't believe how well he projects, man.
It is crazy. If you were to go Metcalf, Geno, Lockett, and Fant, it works. But the problem is you fully max out the 50K. So you max out the 50K. My guess is that this is just a wildly chalky lineup.
Did you sim it? Let's see what it is.
I'm going to do it.
Let's see here.
Got to be chalky, right?
You would think so, but who knows? We've been wrong on a lot of these, so maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised.
Wow, 20%, better than I thought.
Yeah, sometimes you never know. That is better than I thought.
I wonder what would happen if you went JSN over Metcalf
All
and then,
right.
all right, ready? And then Jason Myers or Matthew Wright over
Well,
Fant.
Wright projects extremely well, so let's just, I guess, use him for the sake of it. Who's
Okay,
our final guy then?
so it would be Debo and Mason. So Debo captain, Mason flex, JSN, Geno Smith, Tyler Lockett, Matthew Wright.
I like it. Let's see it.
My guess is a slight positive ROI. Oh,
I
okay.
was going to say, I think it would be pretty good.
Not bad.
No, I like this.
Let's build one more before we go, and we'll do it with, I think we probably try to captain. Well, what do you think, Mason or Geno?
Let's try a Geno one. He's projecting better than I thought. Mason's pretty clearly a good play, I think.
Okay, Geno.
So we got to stack him.
Oh, yeah, without question. Metcalf. You know, it's funny because Metcalf projects better than JSN and Tyler Lockett, but not so much better. And he's a lot more expensive.
I have no problem doing a JSN Lockett.
Let's try it.
All right, so we got Geno, JSN, Lockett. That gives us a decent amount of salary.
I want Mason here because I think of this. If Geno's captain, I could very much see this being a game where he's playing from behind, like we saw against Detroit in week 4.
Yeah, I could easily see that. We have a lot of salary left. We can go Mason and another stud. We could add in Debo very easily.
Okay. That gives us Matthew Wright.
Yeah, this should be pretty good, I would think.
I'm going to say 190.
Wow. That would be sick. Oh.
Is it negative?
No, it's good. It's not 190.
Oh, I was
but
close.
it's good.
Actually, I just ran it on my side, 186.6. I was 4%. I was 3.4% off, Matt.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Man, you're on this. Let's ship it
I just
tonight.
had because well, look, we're semi cheating because we know the tools like Geno and they like Matthew Wright, like the projections right now. So, you know, we're kind of cheating.
Well, it says in the tool. Like I have been looking at the projections and ownership all day, but when you fill in a lineup, it tells you these things too.
Right. Right. Exactly.
But the one thing it doesn't tell you on the front end is dupes. I mean, maybe we could have entered a super well projected lineup that just duped a lot, but it didn't do that.
It didn't. And it comes down to obviously not only projection, but ownership and leverage. You're talking about the dupes. That's one of them. Jordan, did you do large contest at 25%? You did, right? Yeah, that's fine. Last thing, Matt, I'm just gonna run the same lineup, large contest at 30%, because that's what we've been seeing these large contests pay out up top to first. And if you guys are using the tool, I think it was Matt that pointed this out the other night on Monday Night Live before lock. But Matt, you definitely want to adjust the archetype of these, like whether you're playing a large or small contest, whether you know, adjust the percentage to first. So if I'm playing like the play action in the first down, I'm running it with 10,000, adjust the slider. Usually I leave it at marquee because anyone can join those. So it's not like you have all of these people that don't know DFS in there. I usually leave it at that, but then I do 10% to first. I run that, I save those. But then what if I'm doing the power sweep or something, I'm changing it to 5,000 and then 20% to first or whatever it may be for the milli, 10,000 and then 30% to first. You want to be sure of that because the lineups that you're getting that sim the best are very much dependent on what the payout up top looks like and the field size.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a 30% to first, it's just going to be way more variance, and you want to take first place at some point over the long term as you're playing that contest. So the sim is going to give you different lineups to reflect that. You might be a little riskier in what you're playing because you are shooting for a first place prize in a field that is hundreds of thousands of people. But then if you're playing the power sweep, something that has a lot fewer opponents, it's going to give you different lineups because you're just not going to see if you're not playing against as many people. You don't need to hit the absolute stone nuts in a situation like that. And those are kind of just heuristics, but the tool is taking care of that for you in the back end.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I think that's a great place to end. I ran it at 30% for large field and got 213% simmed ROI.
You'll take that.
We'll take it all day. Hey, follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski. We did the Hall of Fame segment yesterday, Jordan and I, and we had what, 40 of them, Jordan, or something? Right? 40 of them with people rocking the avatar. Stochastic.com/HOF, by the way. We just gave away, we give away like probably like $8,000 worth of subs just on that one video from everybody. And 5 rings to the Ring of Honor, 20K plus wins. Stochastic.com/HOF. Just download the avatar, use it wherever it is you play, finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more, and tweet us your wins at StochasticHOF. You know the drill. People just crushing with the avatar. But the amount of people that shouted out Matt Gajewski and his college football projections and the college football sims on top of that, which are using your projections, was a big number, Matt. So keep it up, brother.
Just happy to see people having success. Put my heart and soul into those things. So it's good to see the people out there with success. Very much appreciate the shout outs. Thank you. And you guys are the ones that make the lineup. So give yourself some credit for sure.
Yeah, man. Anyway, appreciate you guys. You're the best. And hit me up at Laffy_D on Twitter, LOUGHY_D. Find me over on Tails in the premium Discord. Having a great year if you like to bet sports. Aside from that, we'll see you back here tonight, live before lock. Greg Ehrenberg and myself. Peace.